Hello, and thank you for joining me today for Call Potential's latest fireside chat. I'm the Director of Marketing, Holly Fiorello, and today with me, I have our Call Potential CEO and founder, Phil Murphy, who is also the president of Nextdoor Self-Storage. Phil, let's talk a little bit about the data we have today.
Great, thanks, Holly. Yeah, we've been doing this for a few months now, and for those that may not have been able to see one of our previous sessions, what we've done is we've gone and pulled all of our data for stores and that have been with us multiple years to look at data year over year, month over month, seeing really how has that data changed? How have recent events, how is the economy, the market, all of that influence those numbers? And we continue to do this each month to give our customers and also those that may not be Call Potential customers yet an idea of how are their stores doing? What are some of the improvements? What are the things that they might be doing to really hit a home run every time? So we can hop into it. Holly, I don't know if you mind sharing your screen there. We can start walking through some of the data.
Absolutely. Perfect.
So really the first thing that we have is really coming into this collection events data. Now, before I jump into the data, I really want to walk through what is a collection event. So within Call Potential, a collection event is any scheduled event that goes out in order to contact a delinquent customer. So our users are able to create a calendar, a schedule that says, on when a customer becomes 1 day delinquent, 5 days delinquent, 7 days delinquent, and so on and so forth. Do they get a text? Do they get an email? Do they get an auto-dialed phone call or a live call? Now, this is both live manual events and automatic events. And so what we've done is we try to look at that over time. Initially, 2020 was showing a lot of growth over time, as we were going into it over 2019. But then, we saw a lot of people cutting back when we go in here. So kind of looking at this data, you'll see, in March, the 2020 numbers were above 2019. But as we headed into April, May, June, people were really starting to adjust, really starting to kind of pull back in order, how do I reach my customers? I don't want to bother them. They soften their tone. But as the economy started opening up, as the industry and markets are returning back to normal, you're really seeing July for the first time jump back above 2019. And one thing just to make sure everybody's aware of is the data we're looking at here is the first 7 days of the week. So what we did is we tried to sit there and pull the first week of the month to sit there and look at it and go, okay, what is the first week of March versus April, May, June, July? We're going to continue to do this, but it allows us to really sit there and measure. Now, as you see, for July, the first week of July, we end up with a 3% year-over-year growth, 4% month-over-month. And so it's not just a 4th of July anomaly, or it's not just a change. We're seeing a constant trend. You can kind of see July continuing on above where it was, rather than being some sort of outlier.
So I know in past chats that we've had that you and some other operators had really reduced the amount of events that go out for past due rent because of all the uncertainty and people suspending auctions and things of that nature. As an operator, have you switched back to the other amount of messages and cadence of messages that you had before? Yeah. Or are you still on pandemic messaging?
It's a little bit of combination of the two. So, rather than, going in and wholesale changing, it's not a black and white, am I pre-COVID, am I post-COVID? What is it? It's something where with the Call Potential system, we're able to change and ease into that. So we start introducing other messaging. We start introducing, more delinquent messaging towards the customers, trying to push that. But we haven't gotten so far because we still have not reinstituted our auctions. So some of the lien sale and going to auction and messages like that, those are still being left to the side. It's more the mid pressure messages that we're starting to use, and also the increased frequency of those points of contact.
And for those who don't know, I gave him a brief introduction as the president of Nextdoor Self-Storage, but Phil has 17 locations in Illinois. So he can look at this data from both sides of, technology side, being the Call Potential founder, and also the operator side, what he's seeing in his own facilities and discussions with other operators. All right. So was there anything else you want to talk about this slide, or should I go to the next one?
We go to the next one. Because this next slide here, then when we look at that, What we're really going to see is even though our collection events, the contacts, the text, the emails, the phone calls that we're going out are going out, what we also do is part of the system is we allow when a customer is paying the option to sign up for auto pay. And so one of the things as an operator myself, as Holly mentioned, that auto pay is extremely valuable because what we've seen multiple studies have shown is when someone enrolls in auto pay, their length of stay tends to add, and I've seen studies vary from 3 to 6 months in an average length of stay. And so that auto pay is a very important aspect to be able to have. And it was interesting because we had always seen, the 2020 numbers with growth and things like that, and auto pay enrollment as people have become used to that contactless interaction. But we saw a huge jump in April and then May, and then June was continuing on. Now, the thing as an operator, it was a little bit surprising when I saw those April and then especially May numbers. But I expected it was going to be that temporary, okay, well, the stores are closed, I'll sign up for auto pay, and it'll drop back down to normal enrollment numbers for auto pay as kind of time continues on. But the interesting part to me has been June and July have continued to do that. We've continued to see new auto pays month over month over month, such that you can tell customers are deciding this is a new way they want to do business. This is a new way, and so it's great for the operator because it's that extra length of stay. But it's also great because it frees up that manager time to be doing what we really want them to be all doing, is rather than dialing for dollars, renting units.
And how are they self-serving during the enrollment? Is there a place they go? Is it in response to?
Good question. So whether they'll get a text message, an email, they'll call into the pay by phone system. As they're going through that process, we'll prompt them to ask, hey, here's the card you're paying with. Would you like to sign up for auto pay? Our customers our users have the ability to adjust those enrollment terms and messaging so they can have it be whatever they need to agree to. They tap that in. Yep, I'd like to enroll. And for those that didn't, we prompt them and say, hey, you didn't enroll in auto pay. Are you sure you don't want to? Helping again increase that enrollment numbers. And that's what you're seeing is this kind of constant increase in enrollment numbers, which is extremely valuable coming across there. And like you see there, almost a 50% year over year growth in auto pay enrollment, which is just great.
I mean, that's incredible. As you can see, like we've seen the growth and it kind of flattened out, which is where I thought it would stay, but to go up again in July, I guess it kind of shows that people definitely want to use that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's become our customers' interaction of choice. They don't want to have to think about their storage, and that's what we want. If they're not thinking about their storage, then they're not thinking about moving out. Every time they have to write a check or drop off a cash payment or whatever it is they're doing, that's a mental decision as to, am I going to continue to rent this unit? If it's on auto pay, they tend to forget about it. I've had things on auto pay that I realized 6 months later, I'm like, what am I still paying for this? It's like every one of us with a gym membership. I mean, how long have we had a gym membership that that well outlasted our going to the gym, all because they put us on auto pay?
The convenience, absolutely. The convenience factor. All right, I'm moving to the next slide.
Sounds great.
Before we get into this, inbound calls, can you explain the totality of what the inbound calls are?
Yeah, an inbound call is anybody that tries calling one of our stores. So you're going out there, you get your normal business. It's calls coming in. Sometimes it might be an existing customer. Sometimes it might be a lead. It might be answer to your store. They might leave a voicemail. They might do whatever. The outcome is not relevant to what's counted in here. This is looking at going, what's the total volume of inbound calls that we see at a store? Now, the interesting thing here is you can see March pretty much on par with 2019, and really month over month. There was always like slight change, but it wasn't kind of up and down with the average. But what we saw in April was a huge jump, thanks to all of the store closures that were going on and that contactless aspect that we were all instituting. People have started to adjust in May and June, but it was a little bit surprising to see that jump again in July. We're seeing people going back to it. Now, I don't know if that's more a function of what we're going to talk about a little bit later is starting to see some of that return of lead volume, We're starting to see more shopping. We're starting to see more people going out. But it's also people calling in and having conversations and wanting to either pay on their unit or rent another unit or even talking about whether they need to move out or various things like that. And so that volume is needing to be accounted for. Year over year, that was a 10.5% growth over 2019. Month over month, a little bit more reasonable and about a 3% growth. But they're all numbers where it's showing phone calls are not going away. We're not going to in person. We're not going to just text or website. People still, you can't take the place of a conversation you're having with somebody, especially in these times. People want to reach out. They want to know that there's a normal person they're doing business with and that they trust that person they're doing business with.
Yeah, I agree.
And the next one, really what this is this is the one where I think we all felt it. I mean, you talk to every operator can tell you April and May were terrible. It was one where we're sitting there, what happened to all our leads? What happened to all of our volume? It's interesting because, March 2020 was just, right above, touch above. And then, you're seeing normal growth during our busy time here, but it was almost completely inverted in April. In my stores, we saw 50% drop in lead volume. In other operators, we saw larger, we saw smaller. It really depended on the situation of the locality that you're in. Some stores might have been in a more restrictive lockdown. But the interesting thing is we're starting to see a return. You've seen since that April bottom, May went up considerably, a little bit more in June, and then July is the first time we've seen a return to pre-COVID numbers. So, we had seen that last month where we'd seen volume starting to return. It was only slightly off, but then we're seeing an even bigger switch to get us back to those pre-numbers. And those volumes, it really to me tell me that the customers are starting to, or prospects are starting to return back to going out and they're calling multiple places. They're going out and looking at multiple places, whether it's online or it's on the phone or walking in. They're reaching out in order to start breaking free of what they've had. So it's a good sign. We're going to see it talked about a little bit later and how that's translated into rentals. But year over year, we're back to that 3%-ish growth, month over month, 3% growth. And so we're starting to see that return, which is good for all of us, and hopefully showing something that we can continue on in August, September, October, through kind of what we have left of what has traditionally been our busy season.
Now, these leads entered, are these like totality of leads, web leads, aggregator leads, calls?
These are all leads. So these are leads coming in through phone calls. These are leads coming in through aggregators, Sparefoot, storage.com, whatever they are. This is also leads that have come in through their call center or really any source, leads that have walked in.
Okay.
So this is all leads that are coming in.
Okay, so we've had a little bit less leads than 2019. We just got at really where the 2019 numbers are, a little bit of a rebound from people kind of doing the wait to see. And now that this is the environment we live in, they're, making do. So do you have any, I guess on the next screen, we could talk about that. I was wondering if you had any tips for processing those, being better at converting them.
What we found is with these leads, one of the important things, and you're absolutely right, it's going to translate into this next one that we're talking about, which is rentals. Rental to us is any lead that turns into a rental. So this isn't just how many units were rented. This is how many leads were turned into rentals. And so we're looking at that, how likely are people to come in? How likely are they going to be to convert? How likely are they to just be calling around? And what you're looking at here is, just like I said, we had that 50% drop in lead volume, but we saw an even bigger drop in rental volume to coincide with that. And so, that returned in May. June was almost back to normal. And again, July has returned back to pre-COVID numbers, which is a very good place to be. And we're seeing that 5.5% year over year growth. It's showing us that people aren't just calling around anymore. People aren't just window shopping. And, a lot of that, that's really driving that is coming up with that action plan. Every lead that came in, it was extremely important. We had to work that lead. You couldn't just leave it up for the next guy who they happen to drive into. We had to make sure we're following up with them, whether it's phone calls or emails or text messages. We're making sure they have directions to get to your store, because the worst thing you could have happen is they go in and they drive down the street, and they all of a sudden you call them to follow up the next day and they say, well, yeah, I was in their store yesterday and I rented a unit. Turned out it was the place across the street at ABC Storage instead of your place. So making sure your managers have, your leads have the right information is helping close these rentals and then turn them into rentals. And we're going to talk a little bit about conversion rates next, but it was good to see those rentals taking place also.
Were you surprised by this slide?
I was somewhat surprised. July is always a pretty busy month, but you can see year over year, month over month, that remember, this is that first week that we're looking at. And so this showed people are coming back out, they're renting, they're starting to solve their numbers. And I think part of that jump is that pent up from April and May, and people getting accustomed to going out and doing what they want to do. Hey, I'm going to get out of the house. I'm going to solve my storage problem. And I think that's what we're seeing. It'll be interesting if that trend continues throughout July, if that trend continues in August, September. Does our rental season, which is traditionally ended right around the return to school, does it continue into September? Does it continue into October? Or what happens, especially as many schools are going to only be partially returning. We're starting to see more school plans come out. So that start to school isn't as hard of a start point as it's been in the past.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is a lead conversion?
So a lead conversion, this is a lead that's turning into a rental, someone that's given me money. This is not somebody that has gone out and, they were a contact and then they became a reservation. This is an actual rental. They've filled out a lease. Okay. They've rented a unit. They are now a customer. And so, the interesting thing is as we look at that, we had a pretty steady, 2019 in terms of conversion. However, what we have seen is that from April to May, our rental conversion jumped considerably in May. And a lot of that had to do with those leads weren't coming in as often. People that were serious shoppers. They were going out there. And then also we're going out there and systematically trying to follow up and work those leads in order to turn them into rentals. So every one of those leads in that lower volume became extremely valuable, extremely important, because if you were in a situation where you were going out in that April, May timeframe to rent a unit, you were very highly likely going to end up renting that unit. And so we didn't see as much shopping. We didn't see as much duplication of contact in terms of seeing the same phone numbers appearing across sites. We didn't see the same type of callers across locations. Instead, this was somebody going in, they were going to call a place, they were going to satisfy their need. So it was very important to get that person in. Now what we're seeing is as we're getting into July, we're starting to see return back down to kind of those normal conversion rates. And what that's telling me is when we saw that increase in lead volume, we're seeing people going out there and saying, you know what, hey, I'm going to go call more places. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to go work that. And so again, now it's becoming a more competitive situation. It's becoming something where I've got to go out there and, make sure I'm differentiating myself. It's not just, they're going to come in, don't worry about it, they'll be here. We're going to have to continue to work those leads. We're going to have to do what we can. And, that showed a, 2% year over year and, 2% decrease from June as things become more competitive. Stores start to open up more and business starts to kind of return back to normal.
Do you think, we saw early on the adoption of a lot more contact-free tools. Initially, a lot of operators on Call Potential were already using, text messaging, emails, calls in their follow-up sequences. But now they also started sending, e-signs with them where they could digitally sign a lease, or they could go right online and move in and things of that nature. Do you think that might have had any, and this could be speculation until we really dive in the numbers, but do you think that could have had an impact in increasing those lead conversion numbers, that it's right there at their fingertips to make that decision?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have, that instant ability to rent really was something. A lot of operators really pushed that in May and June. How do I engage them? How do I rent over the phone? How do I rent on my website? How do I rent now? And that's become very critical for you to offer. And as we return to more normal business and people, well, I'll be in. Before I'm not going to be in. I've got to do this on the phone. And so as operators, we need to continue to push that. Hey, let's satisfy that now. Just because my store is open, I don't want them to actually come in. If I can rent that unit over the phone, if I can close that deal without them having to come in and show the unit, possibly get lost, like I was talking about before, that's extremely critical. So a lot of our operators, use that e-sign, use that pushing that out there in order to rent the unit now, process that payment over the phone, process that e-sign over the phone, text, email, whatever that is. So that cuts short that shopping. They're not going out there and calling a second, a third location. I've got them. They're mine. I've got their money. They're going to be in. So when they do walk into that wrong store and they say, oh, I'm here for that 10 by 10. And they say, oh no, but I'll help you. No, sorry, I already paid down the street. I got to find the place I paid. It cuts off that walking into the wrong place aspect.
Absolutely. If you were just to give one tip on how a facility could increase their lead conversions, what would you say?
It's have that real conversation and then close that as soon as you possibly can. And what I mean by close that is turn that into rental, ask for that sale. Follow-ups are great. And we want to be doing those follow-ups for those that we can't close on the phone. But we used to do this, just get them in the store, we'll rent them there. Once we get them, the whole idea was get them in the store. Well, now we have that ability to rent without them walking in the store. That's where we really should be going to. Why give them that opportunity to go somewhere else? If they rent here, rent now, great. And it's not just a one-trick pony. You can't just go do it on your website, or you can't just go do it on your phone, or you can't just go do it on an aggregator. You've got to have that option everywhere. Let them do business the way they want to do business so you can win over their business.
So is the manager doing, processing basically the move-in from wherever they are, and then how are they texting it to them to sign a lease, or how are they getting the Hancock?
Within the call potential system, the way it works, somebody will call in, they'll have a conversation, Holly, hey, can I get your name, your phone number, your email, your address? You're going through all the traditional things, if you want whatever that is. As you get there, okay, how would you like to pay for that? They're paying for it. As you're doing that rental, I then text that e-sign to you, or I email that e-sign to you, whatever works for you. You can pull it up on your phone, sign it, hit send, let you know that, hey, this has been processed, this has been signed. Great, Holly, you're gonna go ahead and move into unit 210. By the way, there's a lock on the floor. You can cut that open. That's complimentary to you for doing our over the phone move-in. Or if you want, you could include that in their move-in costs. It's really up to you if you want to roll that merchandise in there. But that whole process makes it less likely they're going to go elsewhere.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. Now, is there anything else? I believe this is the last slide. Is there anything else, if you had your crystal ball, that you would maybe predict for next month when we go back and look at our numbers? What are you hoping to see?
We're starting to see a lot of news about, more closings, things like that. I think we're going to start to see some states pulling back. And so it's one of those things as operators, what I think we really need to be doing is taking this time now when we're still able to operate, doing a double check, making sure your operations are in place, making sure your systems are in place, making sure your managers have what they need in order to be effective. It's very possible as we head into the school year, as we head into the fall, there's a lot of conversation about resurgence. Now is the time to be preparing for, what if I'm not able to find a new manager? What if I'm not able to get them trained? What if I have somebody calling in sick? How do I roll calls to another store? How do I handle that move-in process, that payment process from an AV situation? How do I go out and what's my contingency plan, whether it's locking down the store or working from home, so that, hey, hopefully it's a switch we never have to flip. But if we do, we're not scrambling. So many of us scramble in that end of March, April timeframe. We go, what do I do? And you're running around. Now is the time to be planning that out, because, a lot of people are predicting this could be to the end of the year. This could be longer. It could be shorter. It's one of those things where as business owners, we've got to prepare ourselves for whatever the result is, so that we're not the ones sitting there with closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words. Well, thank you for joining us today, Phil, and anyone who joined us on today's recording. Also, if you guys have any suggestions or questions on best practice tips, things you'd like us to cover, Phil's a great resource, and we would love to be able to provide all the content for you guys that you need, and be a resource for the industry. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming today, Phil. Thank you.
No, thank you. And then, yeah, like if there's information or questions you've got, feel free to reach out to us, if you want to know more or just dig into the details. That's what we're here for. And just really want to share this with the industry. Hopefully, make us all better. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks.